Every supplement at Walmart at one point or another, I have tried. One of my badges of honor while I was competing was I was actually drug tested the most on the team. Where powerlifting, you lift it or you don't. And actually there's no competition besides me versus me. Yeah, I have spreadsheets for everything. I have spreadsheets of my max lifts on almost every lift, on 1 rep maxes to 20 rep maxes.
Today we're really lucky. We get a chance to talk to Kyle Turner. I'm sure that when you find out about Kyle, you're going to realize that this is going to be a very interesting conversation. I think of you as a Renaissance man, just because you got your fingers in so many different things. Maybe if you could just highlight the few main things that you're currently working on. We're going to go into some of your past and how you got here, but what are the projects that you're currently working on?
Well, thanks, Joe. I'm excited to be here and hear more of your story as well. But yeah, my name is Kyle Turner. I work in private equity, married. I'd consider myself a gym bro, but I also am passionate about other parts of fitness as well as investing in real estate. And so have my hands in many different pots and try not to get overly distracted by one, but I think they all kind of work together in helping me create what I view as, a fairly interesting life.
Yeah, very cool. So to lead into this very interesting life, because these are, first of all, I got to say something about the real estate that I'm geeking out over is if anybody could own real estate in Kauai, like there could not be a better place to be, a more fun place to be involved. Is Kauai the only place that you're currently involved in real estate?
So I have properties across the country, a number of different states. Kauai, by far, is my favorite.
Right.
I love every excuse I get to go and visit my properties, which sometimes it's to drop off something simple that somebody else could do it, but it creates a trip for me.
Right.
But yeah, we have properties in Kauai and a number of different states. We have long-term rentals and short-term rentals. The properties we have in Kauai, they're on a beach in a great area called Kaloa, just right there by the ocean. Love going there. And so looking for every chance I can to get out there and get some business write-offs.
So maybe let's start with the real estate side before we dig into everything else so that we don't gloss over it. What made you decide to get into real estate? Like, is this a family thing? Was this the way you were raised, or was it a rabbit hole you went down when you were younger? Or?
Yeah, a little of both. So my parents and my grandparents, they all had been big into buying real estate, duplexes, fourplexes. My story, though, is when I was in college, I thought I knew what I wanted to do, and I thought that was to be an accountant. The main goal actually was to be a professional athlete. That wasn't a likely scenario, probably wasn't going to happen. So going down the finance accounting route, I took Accounting 200 at BYU, and I took my final. And a couple things from it is, first off, the accountant professor, he told us what we could expect our first year's pay to be after getting out of the program. It was very underwhelming. I realized there's got to be something better than this. That lack of excitement didn't help me in studying for my final, and I failed it. So I failed my Accounting 200 final, and it caused a lot of self-reflection. What am I going to do? Because I thought this was going to be the thing I would do. And I guess to make a short story longer, I ended up dropping out of school after that because I was so confused. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what the path forward was. Lucky for me, I had a number of good mentors in my life, and one in particular I started going to the gym with. And every morning we'd spend hours talking about finance, creative finance, and real estate investing. And it was life-changing for me. Just hearing these unique strategies, learning about Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, a number of other helpful finance and investing books. And so for me, I was fortunate. I was lucky. Dropping out of college ended up being a great thing. I made more than the professor said I'd make in that first year, and that was as a college dropout. But I was able to pivot what I was doing those first couple months into buying my first rental property. And so I went from being a kid with no financial prospects to a couple months later, I started my real estate journey, and haven't really looked back since, and it's been a great experience.
That's awesome. So growing up, let's get into the background, because not everybody, honestly, I think most people would kind of be devastated. Dropping out of school, you think that this is your future, this is how you're going to move forward. The fact that you were able to be as flexible as you were and still pivot and succeed. I'd like to find out a little bit about your family. You said your family had been involved in some real estate investing, but we don't necessarily need to go into the real estate side. Tell me a little bit about your family. What are your folks from here in Utah?
Yep. So I was born and raised here in Utah. Family was born and raised here as well. I grew up right in the same neighborhoods my parents grew up in. So there's a lot of family around, a lot of people to help mentor and point you in the right direction. My family, though, for whatever reason, was always very investment minded. My parents would do games for us to try and teach us concepts. So I remember in the year 2000, maybe not the best year to be an investor in the stock market, but they played a game with us where they gave us a bunch of fake money. And at the time, I thought this was so cool. But they gave us all this fake money and they said, hey, we want you to go research and pick a couple stocks. So as like an 8 or 9-year-old, I'm sitting in there reading and trying to figure out because they were going to give us a prize. And I went and picked Home Depot. My sisters and some other siblings, they picked a bunch of tech stocks and I crushed their returns. I smoked them.
Right.
And so to this day, I take a little bit of pride. It's my first fake investment was Home Depot, and I did really well, and I got a camping lantern out of it.
You got a camping
I got a camping lantern.
You won a camping lantern. That's cool.
Yeah, but they did a great job trying to teach some of those early principles, and they'd even dangle things too and say, hey, if the stock market goes up, because I didn't fully understand what that means, that we can do this or we can do that. One of the things is if the stock market hits X level, the S&P 500, we'll buy a four-wheeler.
Right.
And so I remember every night as a young kid praying that the stock market would go up. I really want this four-wheeler.
Right.
So my nightly prayers were, basically just praying that I can get what I want.
That's awesome. My younger son, I had a friend that was doing really well with options. A lot of the brokerage firms, the fees have come down so low that you can do minor option trading and it doesn't really cost anything. And I was focused on a couple other things, so I didn't have the time. But to this son who was very investment minded, I said, hey, if you want to learn how to do this, I'll give you the money and you can take the profit from it. Well, I don't know if you remember, but a couple years ago, the stock he bought was GameStop. Now, that being said, these are options, so it was like basically weekly, but we always, we joke around about that. Like, you picked a great one. It was before everything happened, but
that's a lot of fun. And it's great to have those experiences. Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. The main point is that you're in the race. And I think that applies to everything in life. Yeah. It's, you're not going to win every battle. Right. You're not going to hit it out of the park on every investment. But the main point is that you're trying, you're learning, and you're trying to make it so that on future investments that you do better and you protect yourself on the downside. Yeah. Relates to the gym as well. It's, I may not be where I want to be fitness wise, but if I'm showing up, I'm putting an effort, I'm trying to learn, grow, and do new things. It's a good recipe to get to where you're trying to be.
You led perfectly into that because I was just going to say, we haven't really featured your story, but your background is really track and field, right? Is that the first sport that you started really focusing on, or as you were growing up, what was your sport?
Yeah, I grew up playing a lot of soccer, mainly soccer, but later I realized I'm kind of fast or relatively fast. But yeah, in junior high is when I started getting into track. And as a junior high kid, I was objectively the slowest kid on the team. I was faster than some, slower than a lot. But I was just fast enough that I didn't get cut. And I just stuck around and I said, hey, at some point I will be the best. I'll just work harder than everybody else. They'll lose interest, they'll get bored, and they'll drop off. And luckily for me, all those happened. I got faster, but they all started to drop off because they weren't putting in the effort to see the improvement. And so each year I'd move up a spot on the team, went from being the slowest to next to the slowest. And by my 9th grade year, I was the fastest kid in our school district. Wow, as a kid, it felt cool. In reality, it doesn't really matter. But transitioning into high school kept that trajectory of improvement. And each year just was able to get a little bit better. My whole goal was, what can I do to try and improve, and what are other people not doing? And it's one of the things that makes me actually jealous for today is there's so many opportunities for kids to improve with what's happened in college sports, with NIL, with the money, the knowledge that's available. Yeah. It's even knowing about supplementation. I was going into GNC as this scrawny 14-year-old, and I was asking this yoked bodybuilder, how do I run faster? And his answer to me, it was what a bodybuilder would tell another bodybuilder. Nobody really knew anything back then. But I am jealous today of the knowledge that's available. And so I remember thinking creatine was steroids in high school. Right. I wish I would have taken creatine in high school, but I got into taking protein, and I thought that was being aggressive and cutting edge, that I was taking protein powder. Right. But slowly just kept improving, just putting in effort. My senior year of high school, I did pretty well in track. I ended up winning state in 4 events, which in track, they only let you compete in 4 events. So that's maxing out the number of things that you can win state in.
And you won them all.
And somehow I won them all.
That's
I don't think
awesome.
anybody in the state of Utah has done that since, or really before, to toot my own horn a little bit.
No, that's cool.
But yeah, it creates some opportunities. Got to come to BYU and compete in track there as well.
So I got to back up for a second, because you said something that I don't know if you understand how profound it is, but for a kid to have the thought, they're all going to drop off, all I got to do is stay with this. Where did that come from? Like, is this like a motto in your family, or like, how did you have that perspective of, I just got to keep showing up?
You know, it just always seemed to be the case with even other sports I did as a kid. You know, other people just get bored and their attention spans don't last. And just if I just stick around longer than them, I'm going to get more opportunities. So even at practice, if I stick around a little bit longer, I'm going to get more time with the coach. If I show up earlier, I'm going to get more opportunities to dribble. If there's all these things that if I'm just putting in a little bit more effort than somebody else, they're either going to get distracted, their mom will come and pick them up, or they'll just end up doing something else. And so I just think in life, there's a lot that applies that can come from that if you just outlast somebody, you're probably doing something right. And not everything is worth sticking with forever. And so it's making sure what you're doing is a worthwhile thing, a worthwhile goal. But yeah, in general, it's if you can persevere and stick with something and put in more effort than somebody else, you'll probably outlast, and they'll probably drop off and get bored.
When you didn't feel like you were the fastest, because I don't know if I believe you when you say that you weren't the fastest kid, but when you feel like you aren't, how do you stay motivated that there's all these other ones that are better than you? And I mean, obviously, if you put in the work, it's going to pay off. But that just seems like an incredibly mature perspective. My mind just keeps going back to that and thinking, I kind of wish I knew Kyle as a kid. Kyle would have been a really fun friend.
I was a weird kid. I was the really weird kid. My brain is a little bit weird in some ways too, that I'll get overly fascinated or fixated on certain things. So I'll get certain numbers that stick in my head, or certain concepts and ideas, and they'll just run on repeat. And so in high school, the whole idea of I run a 10.9 100 meter probably played in my mind 100 plus times per day. It just on repeat, nonstop, over and over and over and over and over again. And to this day, that same concept applies, that these things just keep repeating over and over and over again, different goals I have. And sometimes I don't love it that I just keep thinking what my goals are just so often. But in some ways, it does help make those goals become reality, because it becomes such a part of who I am that just repeating those little mantras, it slowly makes the impossible seem more possible.
Now we're going to pivot forward to the incredible feat of, what is your max bench press? Because that's a number.
Yeah. So currently it's 475, and that's weighing about 199 pounds.
I swear I've seen you do more than that.
I've definitely failed with more, and I've overtrained. I've used slingshots and board presses. The most that's ever gone up was 475. Hopefully we'll hit 500 at some point. But yeah, it's a decent number. I've competed in powerlifting for a while. And so I've done full powerlifting meets for a number of years. I've done bodybuilding.
Yeah.
Powerlifting has just been the thing that I've liked the most, because it's easier to track the progress.
Right.
I didn't like bodybuilding because it was so subjective.
Right.
You can show up and you think that you are in better shape than this guy, but this guy wins. Where powerlifting, you lift it or you don't. And actually there's no competition besides me versus me.
Yeah.
So you go to a meet, you can cheer for the other guy. I can get dead last, which resonated with me because that's what track is.
Right.
In track, if I run the time I want, I don't care if I'm first or last. Honestly, it doesn't matter. Powerlifting is the exact same. So for me, it resonated the most that it's all just numbers. If I get the number I want, I won.
We were talking a little bit before. I almost wonder if that's what's killing the sport of bodybuilding, because we have a pro, and she competed locally and didn't win, went to a national competition in Pittsburgh, smoked it. And it's like, this was within 3 weeks of each other. And that's the other thing. Like, if you watch the Olympia, the thing that kind of weirds me out a little bit is they'll have the lifts, I mean, the competition early on in the day, and you'll think that so-and-so is going to win it, and they're not even in the top 5, and that just blows my mind. Especially with our bodies, because we've all had good days where we feel really good. We wish that we felt like we had that pump in the gym all the time, and it just doesn't happen.
Yeah.
It's just, sorry, my mind just got running on that. It's
a true point.
It's pretty fascinating.
And it's like Arnold says, nothing beats a pump. There's nothing better.
Yeah.
And that's for a type A personality, which I'd put myself in that category. I track things. I have 1 million spreadsheets to track every area of my life.
Really?
It's sometimes a little bit OCD, obsessive compulsive, but the idea of subjective sports drives me nuts.
Yeah, exactly.
Which all team sports to some degree are. It's who's the coach going to play, this kid or that kid?
Yeah.
What are the definitive metrics? Now in football, they get really particular, and you can see how many tackles for loss and all these different metrics. At the end of the day, though, it's still not clear cut who's the best.
Yeah.
And so for me, I have to know yes or no, that I need a sport that is you lifted it or you didn't. You ran the time or you didn't.
Right.
So track and powerlifting, they just resonate in my mind because it's just simple, it's clean. I don't need to overthink it.
Yeah. So you have spreadsheets. Like, do you update your spreadsheets daily?
Yeah, I have spreadsheets for everything. I have spreadsheets of my max lifts on almost every lift, on 1 rep maxes to 20 rep maxes, because I'm always trying to compete with myself. So honestly, one of my favorite training ways, one of my favorite ways to train is actually that. Because for me, being the best version of me is such a euphoric feeling.
Yeah.
But as you get stronger, and especially for me with bench, it is impossible to hit a max every day.
No, yeah,
and
exactly.
When you first start lifting, you probably can. But there's a point where if you hit a max once a year, that is such a good feeling, because you just hit this level that it is really hard to improve. Well, how else can I track improvement?
Yeah.
If I have a 1 to 20 rep max range that I'm tracking religiously, I have 20 maxes for bench press that I can track, that I may not be able to hit a 1 today, but where I'm at in my workout program, today may be a 3 rep max kind of day. And I get the same euphoria of hitting a new 3 rep max as a 5, as a 10, as a 15. And so it gives me so many more numbers to track. And so I'm very religious on tracking all these maxes, where I did it, if I had a witness, and just making sure that I'm staying on top of it, because it gives me more battles and more victories I can have.
The exciting thing that I'm finding is that as I'm talking with experts, it's incredible how it all comes back to numbers. It all comes back to math. I remember a friend of mine got a scholarship to be a receiver at a small university, and they were huge in the junior college football realm. And they had told them, look, they pulled all the scholarships guys in. It wasn't the whole team, it was just the scholarship guys. And they said, if you're struggling in a class, just keep going. Just go every single day. And he said he had this math class and he was just bombing it. And he had no other option other than to just try it out and just keep going. He said, sure enough, he passed it. And that's kind of the stigma attached to athletes. And yet, as I get into talking to professional athletes, talking to expert athletes, it really does come down to numbers, which is crazy. You know, like it's not the stigma that people have. It's kind of like everyone thinks the smartest person in the room has a pocket protector and tape on their glasses, and that's not the case either.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And I think a lot of times people's lack of confidence in some ways comes from a lack of controlling the environment. Well, what's a better way to control and know your environment than if it's a definitive number?
Yeah.
If you can get things down and boil it down to where it's so simple that it's a yes and no, it's a number, it makes it a lot more controllable. It makes it easier to be confident about something. And so I think that's why athletes resonate with tracking and metrics, because it's a way to know if you were able to accomplish the thing instead of it being subjective to where, you know, it's anybody's guess if you're able to accomplish the goal.
Now, you talked about earlier when you were first getting into the supplement realm and the bodybuilders were suggesting these things, you stuck with protein. What's changed about your supplement choices? Like you're still on protein, right? Have you changed up how you take protein?
So yeah, I definitely have changed since I was this 14-year-old kid who had no idea, and the protein was disgusting. It tasted
chalky.
Disgusting, chalky. It tasted like it was fermented and gross.
Right.
Definitely have progressed since then. I went on a service mission for my church, and ironically, on that mission is when I started buying everything at the Walmart supplement counter. Every supplement at Walmart at one point or another, I have tried. And I tried it all on my mission.
Wow.
So yeah, we went through everything. And ironically as well, on that mission is where I really developed my love of lifting. I was lucky enough that somehow I had access to gyms, whether that was even in the apartment where we had barbells and racks, or we were going to commercial gyms, that I was really able to get into fitness and lifting. And I remember my first 300-pound bench press, which now I look back and it doesn't seem that impressive, but I hit that
at 19.
At 19 as a scrawny, service missionary for my church who was just figuring out creatine for the first time.
Right.
So I came back from that and I feel like I had a pretty good idea on things with supplements. It's evolved since then, but I'd done track before I left, and I left as a scrawny 170-pound track runner at BYU. I came home at 185 pounds, significantly more muscle, and that's typically not the case. You usually come back weighing more, but I came back significantly more muscular, stronger, and more fit, to where the BYU strength coach was asking me, like, hey, what were you doing for 2 years? Like, were you on a mission, or were you just at the gym? And honestly, it was both.
Yeah.
I was at the gym quite a bit, but my locker at BYU eventually ended up looking like a chemistry lab. I had a little bit of everything in there. It's beta-alanine, caffeine, creatine, BCAAs, every supplement, every pill, and everything that you could. And one of my badges of honor while I was competing at BYU was I was actually drug tested the most on the team. I took that as a badge of honor because they're testing the person they think looks the most dirty. And to me, that was a compliment.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's like, hey, I got tested more than the throwers, more than any of the other people.
Right.
And I came up clean every time. And to me, that was one of my greatest accomplishments.
Right.
I was tested the most, came out clean every time, even though my locker made it look like I wouldn't pass any of those tests.
Right, right. Yeah, it's actually, as with my background with the product, one of the things that kind of surprised me was I went to get my product patented because it was doing really well. So of course I looked into what does it take to get it patented in other countries, and I was shocked how big of a deal it is that we have access to things like beta-alanine, citrulline. A lot of these things are banned in other countries, or a lot of these things in higher doses are actual drugs. A lot of the nootropics, one of the big nootropics is literally something that is a drug for dementia in Russia. And so then I started looking at it a little bit differently. It was like, oh my gosh, like we're not juicing, but we have some significant performance enhancing stuff available to us. One of the weird rabbit holes right now is a lot of professional athletes are using colostrum, like human breast milk. They're paying lots of money for these mamas that their babies are not drinking the breast milk, and so the athletes are buying them. And I believe the NCAA has actually banned it as a performance enhancing. And so it's just really cool. I think we're long past the days of the golden age of bodybuilding, where the bodybuilders would go into the cafes. This is probably before your time, but back in the cafe, back in the Denny's and stuff, they'd have little cups of creamer on the counter. They're just open stainless steel cups of creamer, and they would go in there and they'd down that was how they were getting their protein, increasing their whey protein.
Oh wow.
Yeah. And actually the main backbone of Grow Muscle is NAD, which back then it was niacin. Before the bodybuilders started using all of the steroids and stuff, all of them knew about niacin. And now it's this big anti-aging thing that they've stumbled across. So yeah, the ingredients are Pretty profound.
And a lot's changed. And I think the thing too I've found with supplements from my experience is there's a lot of hype around a bunch of different supplements to where there's some that give you a lot more bang for your buck.
Yeah.
So if I look at what my supplement stack looks like today versus what it looked like 15 years ago or 20 years ago as the kid who was buying everything that guy at GNC told me to,
right,
it is very different because there is a lot better return on investment for some than others. So for me, I keep it fairly simple now. It's, I use my Grow Muscle, I use my Clear Path, but also I use protein, creatine, and fish oil, and L-arginine as well. Yeah. But besides that, I really don't do anything else because those are the ones I found the most success with. Yeah. I want to keep it as simple as possible. And, I don't need to overcomplicate it by having a million things. I'm sure there are really good things out there I'm not doing that I probably should.
Right.
But for me, that's just kind of what I've landed on.
I think it's smart because you could easily chase fads. It's especially the sad thing to me is in the weight loss industry, there's always some new fad. And it seems like what sells best is the shortest cut. And in all reality, those are usually the ones that you're going to get hurt doing or they're going to die off because people are going to realize this is a fad, But one of the other things, when you go to the conferences where you look at the ingredients and the providers of the ingredients, one of the concerns that I have is that a lot of them, the majority of the industry is becoming Chinese-based. And with my background in Chinese medicine, one of the things that concerned me was there's no regulation. There's a lot of motivation to want to earn money, and so shortcuts are kind of the norm. Years ago, there was a big scandal with protein. Like you think protein's protein, but it was called the amino doping scandal. And what the Chinese, I don't mean to be targeting them, but we keep catching them doing these shortcuts. What they found was the scientific testing that we were using to determine how much protein was in it. You could test and it would be positive if you ground up beaks and feathers.
Oh, wow.
Of birds. Yeah. And so the amino doping scandal, what happened was there were a lot of really big protein companies, and someone figured this out and they started testing to see how much actual protein was in their protein powder. And some of them were like disgusting, like 5% of your protein powder is actual protein. So yeah, it's kind of a double-edged sword. Having an open market, you have to be very, very. You kind of have to stay on top of what's trending, and honestly, the best way to do it is to listen to your body. And like if you're getting success with something, there's something that's working with that. So
I'd agree with that too, and it just reminds me back to the olden days. There was an old pre-workout I used to love that worked really well, and it turned out it may have had amphetamines in it. The original Jack 3D.
Yeah, exactly.
Good stuff, but
it did. Yeah, but the weird thing is when you say it may have had amphetamines in it. Not Sudafed, but those amphetamines come from a plant called mahuang, and it's one of the biggest Chinese medicinals that there is out there. And it doesn't surprise me at all that it was effective and it worked really well because it's a medicinal. You know what I mean? And with us being from Utah, it's kind of famous that this is where the Mormon pioneers came. Ironically, I think that's what allowed the majority of those original settlers to survive this harsh environment. The Rockies it gets really cold here. And when you just walk into the valley and you don't have a lot of structures and you don't have any crops planted, it became known as Mormon tea. But that was this herb, Herba ephedra or mahuang. They would cook it up into a tea. Back then, if you were to look through the medical records and see why people died, they died of something called consumption, right? Well, consumption was basically pneumonia. Every minor cold or flu, eventually it'll progress to the point where you start getting fluid in your lungs if you're not treating it effectively. But mahuang or Herba ephedra is great for drying out the lungs. And so their bodies were being given more time to fight the problems because they weren't drowning by all of those fluids building up.
That's fascinating. So the original Jack 3D creators were the potentially early Mormon pioneers. They're onto something.
Yeah,
before
they were
the rest
the ones.
of us.
Maybe that's why we became known as the Beehive State. We were able to,
we're busy and getting things done.
Right? Yeah, I mean, and then that's the other thing. Chinese medicine, food is medicine. Regular food, like ironically, one of the medicinals in the materia medica is watermelon, and I remember thinking, like, what difference is watermelon gonna make? And yet, you look at it nowadays, and they're learning that there are attributes. It's not just because it has a lot of water in it or a lot of fluid in it to help you stay hydrated, but there's other aspects of it. So. Anyway, I didn't mean to.
Oh, it's fascinating.
Went down the rabbit hole on that one. So tell me about your family. I don't know much about your little family that you've built. Mm-hmm. Not the family you grew up in, but the current family that you have. You've mentioned your wife.
Yeah, I have 2 kids. They're twins.
Oh, wow.
Just about 3. They keep me on my toes, keep us busy, but a lot of fun. Yeah, kids are great, but it's definitely hard to keep good routines and good habits when you have young 2, 3-year-olds, and they're really demanding and they're requiring your full attention. And it's been hard, I'd say, with kids. One of the biggest challenges has been trying to find times to slip in the gym.
Right.
It's because usually that's the first thing to go. For me, mentally, I can't let that go. It's too hard mentally to see yourself go backwards.
Right.
To where it's required a lot of creativity and a lot of waking up early. To where I used to go to the gym in the afternoon, and it was enjoyable and peaceful. And I was going at 2:00 in the afternoon. It's fantastic. Now it's more 4:35 and a.m. and it's not quite as fun, but it feels good still to get done.
It's not quite as fun.
Yeah, the afternoons are definitely better. I'd highly recommend 2 p.m. over 4:30 a.m.
Yeah.
But you just fit it in where you can. And that's been a big takeaway with kids. It's hard, but you just need to find ways to still live a normal life. It's, don't let kids become so stressful that you forget to live. That kids can be a lot of fun, even though they are a lot of work.
So was your wife an athlete too? How'd you meet your wife?
So we met while I was at school, and ironically, she met me after I dropped out of school. So she didn't have to feel like I tricked her and saying, hey, I'm going to create some security and get a degree. She knew what she was signing up for. She's signing up for a kid with no degree, not a lot of prospects for the future. Just, he likes to go to the gym and he talks about real estate all the time. And I guess that was enough. And that was enough to lock her up. And we dated for a year or so, then got married, and we've been married about 10 years
that's
since.
Awesome. Is she from here too?
She's from Seattle, just
Okay.
moved out here for school though.
Uh-huh.
So we got her. She's stuck here in Utah now. It's
Right.
You build the networks, have the family, and so yeah, she's stuck, but originally from Seattle.
So is her family back in Seattle?
Correct. Yeah, they're out in Seattle.
I lived in Seattle for a while when I was a kid. I love how green it is.
Yeah, it's fantastic. My thing with Seattle, though, is I don't know if I've ever seen the sun in Seattle.
Yeah.
It's always cloudy.
Right.
Never seen the sun. But I've been told it's beautiful. I just go the wrong time of year.
It's beautiful. Yeah.
Hypothetically, it's a gorgeous state if
Yeah.
you go on the right days, which I just haven't been there yet on those days.
So how much is she involved with the business side of your life? Is she mainly focused? I mean, twins has got to take up the majority of her life.
Twins are very time consuming, a lot of work. To her credit, though, she does a great job balancing a lot of different roles. So for us in our life, it's outside of taking care of twins, which is a full-time job in and of itself.
Absolutely.
She helps to manage a bunch of our rental properties, and she'll manage our nightly rentals, our Airbnbs. And so she's a great super host on Airbnb, running a decent sized Airbnb business, handling guest concerns and dealing with things. And since our properties are in Hawaii, she is getting phone calls sometimes at 2 a.m. in the morning because it's 10 o'clock there, and they don't think that you're stateside. They think you're in Hawaii too. And But yeah, she handles a lot of our nightly rentals and dealing with our guests, which she does a great job at doing that.
Sounds like a power couple.
Just trying to be, I go to work, lift weights, and then she's the one who's doing the real work.
So what's on the horizon? What are your goals moving forward?
A lot of different things. It's professionally, I have goals, financially, in the gym, trying to start some new businesses right now, adjacent to our Airbnb business, trying to do some things with cleaning companies. Out in Hawaii, we have enough units that might as well bring some of that in-house. Working on building out a cleaning company.
Wow.
Trying to keep my family happy and keep the kids alive. Because sometimes that's not super easy. But I really do. I was talking about numbers that repeat in my head. I bench 495. That's one that's been going on repeat for probably about 10 years. And so I bench 495 is something that I'm working on actively. It may not be this year, it may not be next year, but at some point I'll hit a 495 bench. And that's been a big overarching goal that somehow, some way, someday we'll get there.
So you're saying I bench 495 because you haven't done it yet?
Yep.
Okay, I was thinking that the numbers that repeat in your head were where you are currently at, but you actually tell yourself, I bench 495 and you're not there yet.
Yeah, I guess that's a clarifier. It's because the same thing applies, and I probably think about some of these things too much. It's my net worth is X. I do X. I lift X. And they're all things I haven't necessarily done yet, but it's my mind will repeat these things, and I don't know if it's great, but it repeats them sometimes like hundreds of times a day. It's just on repeat, on loop, that if you see me just sitting there staring off blankly, I'm probably thinking about a goal.
Right.
And it's probably one of those just cycling through my brain. And so, yeah, it is trying to reinforce, and subconsciously, I don't tell my brain to do this. It just does it. But it's often just thinking of those things that are those goals.
Do you celebrate? Like when that happens, you can no longer say I bench 495. You're not going to say I bench 5, you know?
Yeah, well, the problem is my brain still keeps repeating it because I've been thinking it so much. So it's like, no, I already did. We got a new one now.
Right.
But sometimes there is a temporary peace of mind that my mind can be silent for a minute, but then it's just on to the next one. I'm a big believer in, I think there's a saying that's happiness comes from progress.
Yeah.
And so I just have a hard time not feeling like I'm progressing in something. So, once you hit one thing, it's on to the next one. It's when you stop growing is when you start dying.
Yeah.
And that doesn't necessarily always have to be in the gym. And growth can take many different shapes and forms, especially in the gym. It doesn't necessarily have to just be the weight going up every time. But I think there is power in that you should always be working on something.
Yeah.
You should always be trying to grow, learn, expand, because that's, I think, where a great degree of happiness and inner peace are going to come from.
Yeah, 100%. So one of the things, if we can get back to reaching your goals, one of the things that kind of surprised me, you mentioned that you'll use like blocks or you'll use the slingshot. One of the things that I think of when I think of the slingshot is for those that don't know, the slingshot is a band that basically goes between your arms that assists up until about right here. And from this point on, it's all you. And so it's not necessarily cheating, but in my mind, it's what taught me how psychological lifting was. Because if I do it with the slingshot, my mind doesn't necessarily correlate the fact that I'm being assisted. My mind goes, oh, I can do this. Like what was normally my max, I can do sets with the slingshot. The other thing is, like, you look at people where, like, a car, there's an automobile accident and a mom rolls a car off of her child. Like, we know that we leave a lot in the tank. And I think a lot of that has to do with psychological barriers. And as you talked about how you've kind of wired your brain for success because you can overcome any negative psychological barriers by just simply saying, this is what I do. You're not there yet, but you're not telling your brain, oh, I can't do this. You're not saying all this negative stuff that's kind of tearing you down. You're like, this is where I'm going to be. This is where I'm going to be. And you make your reality through that thought process.
I'd agree. And I saw a quote that is somewhat related, but Sam Altman, he's the CEO, founder of OpenAI, ChatGPT. He said all the successful people he knows are confident to the point of delusional, self-confident to the point of almost delusional,
right?
To where they believe in what they're doing so much that in some ways it is a little bit weird.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that's maybe the best recipe, but I think there is something true to that self-confidence does make a big difference. And so going back to what you're saying, I love a slingshot for a couple different reasons. And if they wanted to sponsor me at some point, happy to. That'd be great. But the slingshot does that. It helps you feel that confidence. It maybe adds 10%, maybe 15% onto your lift. It helps give you the confidence that I've held that weight before.
Yeah.
But more than just that, and these are my unscientific thoughts on why it helps. But in my mind, a slingshot is beneficial because I like to visualize it that I have my muscles, I have my chest, my biceps, my triceps, but I also have all the connective tissue. I have my nervous system, and those are all separate entities, is how I view them. I need to lift my muscles, but I also need to train my nervous system. I need to train and lift for my ligament strength and health. And in my opinion, your nervous system and your ligaments and tendons take longer to build than muscle.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's true or not. To me, it is. But one thing that the slingshot does, it helps to work that nervous system. If you're lifting weights you've already done, it's kind of hard to really push that envelope. And so I feel it's actually a really effective nervous system lift.
Huh.
I don't know, but to me, that helps. I've never had an injury in lifting, and I would attribute a large amount to it that I've used a slingshot for a number of years. I've been able to overload without destroying my chest. I've been able to build the nervous system, the connective tissue, the ligaments, to where I've never had pec injuries, which you see often.
Yeah.
I've never had elbow injuries, shoulders. And I just think part of it is I kind of view those as three separate things. And the slingshot, in my opinion, helps with all of them.
Being much older than you and constantly looking back. But it's weird because I think about a lot of the advances that are made today were things that they were trying to norm out before. Like you didn't want to put too much strain on the ligaments. So you had to lift this way so the ligaments didn't take the strain. And yet now we're learning, oh my gosh, you can overcome pretty major knee problems by strengthening those ligaments. You're specifically targeting those areas that you were told you're not supposed to lift like that. Now, by rounding it out so it's not just hyper-focused on just muscle, you're working on connective tissue, nerves, mind-muscle connection.
It's true.
It's so much
if you follow
smarter.
the knees over toes guy, some of the exercises that he does, I don't know how that's good for your knees.
Right.
But he's living proof that it does work, it does help, and a lot of people have found success with it. And so it's the paradigm shift that's happened in training, I think has been really helpful. We've learned a lot of new things, which in general should be the whole idea of progression anyways.
Yeah.
You know, society and knowledge progresses as well.
Yeah.
So we can progress in our own lives, but the knowledge has been progressing, so we probably shouldn't hold on to the old knowledge, probably embrace the new stuff that's coming out because it's just building upon what's already been there.
It's there's a young skateboarder. We were talking earlier about Tony Hawk. There's a young skateboarder in Japan who's 9 years old who does back-to-back 900s. And Tony Hawk was talking to him, and he said, from the first time that you landed a 720, how long did it take you to land a 900? And he said, 1 day. And Tony Hawk just like,
wow.
the pioneers have to grind through this progression of doing things that have never been done, breaking. And then these new up-and-comers, like they just absorb this knowledge and the progression just goes so much faster.
It's crazy how that works too. It's, you think of the story of the 4-minute mile. I was a runner, not a distance runner. I was a short sprinter. But the story of the 4-minute mile, I think it was Bruce Bannister maybe, but he breaks the 4-minute mile. People thought it was this impossible thing that was physically impossible to do.
Yeah.
After he does it, now there's high school kids that on occasion can do it as well.
Yeah.
It's once one person does it, it seems more possible. Well, going back to a slingshot and other forms of training, once you've held a weight once, maybe it will feel impossible at the time, but it becomes to feel more possible the more you do it.
What I notice is if I'll stick with using the slingshot for a week and then I'll go not using the slingshot, and it's almost shocking to me that I can't get it up because I've gotten it up. And so I'm not as willing to just give up. Like, I know I can get this up. Like, what do you mean you're not going up? Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and I don't know if this is also the best. I used to do this quite a bit. It's when I was trying to hit a heavy bench press, I'd go hit that weight that I'm trying to hit with the slingshot on first, build that confidence, then I'll go hit it without the slingshot. It's taxing on your body. It's probably not the best strategy. But for me, it actually helped quite a bit. Yeah. You hit it with the slingshot. When you take the slingshot off, I've already lifted this weight.
Yeah.
I've already felt what it feels like.
The psychological barrier is gone.
It's that mom who picks up that car. She doesn't have to overthink it. She's just running on adrenaline. I've already lifted this.
Yeah.
I think it actually becomes a lot easier, and it actually feels lighter in your hands.
Yeah, it does.
I felt it already. I lifted it. And so that's one thing I've done. I wouldn't necessarily recommend it, but I had success with that.
Yeah, very cool. Once again, you have not disappointed. I told you beforehand that there's certain things that I look for that successful people just have, and they don't. I don't know if most of them realize that they have it, but you're hitting all of them. I really appreciate you taking the time talking to us today.
Well, I appreciate you guys, and I love the Clear Path. I take it every day, and so I appreciate you guys for putting out a great product.
Thank you.